To discuss today's meeting, our foreign affairs commentator, Douglas Herbert, is with me in the studio. And Doug, first of all, these talks happening today come 6 weeks after Russia pulled out of that initial deal. Give us a sense of what's been happening in the intervening 6 weeks.
Yeah, why are we even having these talks? Right?
Yeah.
That's the question. You know the old adage, Nadia, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, most international observers would say that there was nothing broken about the year-old Ukrainian, the Black Sea grain deal from which Russia withdrew back in July. It had allowed Ukrainian grain exports to the tune of 33 million tons to be exported past Russian warships on the Black Sea from Ukrainian ports and onward to markets in Africa, in the Middle East, in Asia that desperately needed that food. And as a result, we saw food prices coming down. We saw food getting to the needed markets. So Russia pulled out. Russia pulled out at the time. What were its official reasons? Its official justification was, well, the food wasn't really getting to the most poor markets. It was getting more to well-fed European markets. Another justification experts will say is absolutely just simply not true. They will also say that Western sanctions were effectively preventing Russia from exporting its own agricultural products, its grain and fertilizers, because of logistics and payment and access and port access restrictions. Let's be very clear. The Western sanctions against Russia never applied, never in the written agreement, never explicitly applied to Russia's grain or its fertilizers, did not affect those exports. Russia says it was collateral damage. The justifications it came up with, most World Food Program people, most food experts will tell you, most international observers will tell you, were simply thinly veiled justifications, bogus justifications, in order to achieve two goals. One, to wreck Ukraine's economy further than it's already wrecked Ukraine's economy. And two, to try to blackmail the West into lifting those sanctions. That is essentially why these talks are taking place. Remember, Turkey was a broker. The UN brokered the deal, and Turkey was sort of the intermediary here. So this was a deal in which Turkey had a very big role, played a big role, and this is why it's the Turkish foreign minister today meeting with Russia to try to find a way to get Russia back on board with a grain deal, like I said, that most international experts said was working perfectly.
OK, so what do you think, if anything, is going to come out of this meeting today?
Well, what a lot of people hope will come out of the meeting is Russia getting back into the grain deal as it stood, because since then we've had Russia taking aim at Ukrainian grain stores, its infrastructure, taking aim at Ukrainian ports, including the big port of Odessa, ports on the Black Sea, also on the Danube River, and also explicitly saying that any civilian ship in that area will be considered as potentially carrying military cargo, and that is complicit in the war on Ukraine's side. So they'd love to see that happen. That's not going to happen. How do we know it? Russia's already coming into this meeting with an alternative proposal to the Black Sea grain deal. I say alternative proposal, remember, to a deal that had been working absolutely perfectly in the opinion of world experts. So here is how we can fix something that wasn't broken. And what is that deal? Well, the foreign ministry, the Russian foreign ministry, issued a statement just yesterday, on Wednesday, saying that its proposal would be to ship 1 million tons of grain to Turkey at a financial discount, at a discounted, subsidized price, with financial support from, here comes the twist here, from Qatar. Don't ask me what Qatar's financial interest is in here, in helping subsidize 1 million tons of Russian grain shipments to Turkey. So what would happen to it in Turkey? Why is it going to Turkey, Nadia? Well, in Turkey, it would presumably be processed, and then it would head out onwards from Turkey to those markets, the same markets which were getting the grain before the deal collapsed, to those same markets in Africa, Asia, the Middle East. I will just add, once again, this is on top of another sort of what experts say was a bogus sort of propagandistic proposal by Russia at the recent Africa summit, at which Putin said, we will ship free grain in large quantities to 6 African nations, among them the Central African Republic and Eritrea, so on and so forth. All of this, once again, Nadia, just to reiterate, are talks aimed at fixing a deal which most international experts, food experts, and world observers say was not broken in the first place.
Doug, just a final thought from you. This grain deal and potential sort of changes to it isn't the only thing that those two foreign ministers are supposed to be discussing today. What else is on the agenda?
It's the thing we're talking about because I think it's by far the signally most vital thing at this moment. They're going to be talking about perhaps what they call the Russian Foreign Ministry avenues towards a political diplomatic settlement of the Ukrainian conflict. So I imagine that Russia is going to be trying to impress its so-called peace plan conditions on the Turkish foreign minister. Remember, Turkey, NATO member, but also playing a straddling, ambiguous role here, trying to play both sides, both Russia and the West, off against one another. So still an interlocutor of Russia. Russia's going to try to sort of talk up its so-called peace plan points which Ukraine has absolutely no chance of ever accepting because Ukraine insists that Russians must first withdraw their troops to internationally recognized, pre-1991 internationally recognized lines. That peace plan, the Russian one, is going nowhere as far as Ukraine's concerned. They'll talk about Central Asia. They'll talk about the Caucasus region. They'll also probably talk about Turkey and Armenian relations. So there's a lot of sort of regional things they'll be discussing, which will be big issues for them. But once again, from our perspective today, I will be closely watching what happens with that grain deal and whether this so-called alternative proposal has any chance of getting off the ground.
Douglas Herbert, thanks very much for your thoughts.